Afternoon to everyone. Till now, there are many industry experts have been talking about how this CSV and the CSA and how you can take a benefits of the CSA. Now, I'm more talking in terms of technology side. How you can take the benefits of a CSA with a low-code platforms. So, I'm representing AmpleLogic here. I'm the founder and the CEO at AmpleLogic. And here, when you see Mr. Vincenti presentation, he was talking about not CSA is on one side. On the other side is adoption of new technologies, right? The digital technologies and the latest trends of the technologies to take a benefit of minimizing your documentation and all. So let me talk about the typical problem statement that what we have been come across nearly with 10 years of experience in the industry. So the current challenges in the software implementation, just to give a note before, I'm going to get into the CSV and CSA maybe in later part of my slides. First, let me talk about the actual real life challenges and how you can that can be mitigated with a little bit change in your development life cycles. So the main challenge is gap between the technology vendor and the business user. This is a major challenge what we have come across, and the longer implementation and validation timelines. So that is another big thing. Application is taking months together go on live, and longer stabilization. So it's not about implementation and post implementation, and there are missing requirements, not 100% meeting requirements, leading to the lot of time for the stabilizing the software. And yes, again, that high end repetitive and lengthy documentation, that's another thing which really creating a big challenge. And the budget overrun, and it leads to any kind of change which is not there in the URS, leads to your budget overrun. So these are the challenges, may not be limited to this, but these are all certain at a high level challenges what we have come across. Now coming to this question of how you finalize a vendor for EQMS, DMS, and elogs. I think in some of the previous presentation they are talking about a COTS. COTS is nothing but a commercial off-the-shelf product. Whether you have many players in the EQMS and a DMS, electronic logbook, or an MES, they say that we have a wonderful product and this product can solve your business problem. Right. So whenever you are finalizing any vendor, you ask the vendor, you demonstrate your product, and we'd like to see the product. Then after that, you do a detailed analysis. You being a business teams, and there is a group of team from your organization will do a detailed analysis, and then finalize the right vendor based on the product fit, how the product is going to fit in there. And now when you ask many questions to the vendor always says okay, this is the requirement. Yes, it can be done, right? Because our product is flexible. And then you need to release an order with the URS. That's where the problem starts. Wherein the URS will not be having 100% of your requirements, because you being a business users may not be able to give the 100% requirements on the even the system requirement space too. So then this is where the challenge is, because if they change in the URS again, you need to completely go back and change your all the documents, or that add annexures. This is what is leading to a good amount of documentation. Okay, now why do you need to write? If an organization is saying that, a vendor is saying, okay, I have a very good, wonderful product, then why do you need to write a URS from end to end, even for the standard features that are being available in the COTS products? That is a question that it should come to you. Next thing is being it is a cost product, COTS product, there's a commercial off the shelf, is ready to use software. And they have done already many implementations. Yeah, why can't they can also help you in writing an URS as a collaboratively. So that's what is the point is you have almost 30 implementations where the people will say I have 100 implementation, I have 200 implementation. Okay, these are all the companies that have been supplying the product to the to the market, whether it is a US or a European market or domestic market, that all these companies are being complying with those regulations, right? So then you have more experience in terms of implementations. Then why can't we together write a URS? That's where is that we can really minimize a good amount of documentation part. And how this URS development can be done? You can get an access to the COTS product. You being a business user, you say okay, you give me an access to your product, and then use the system to experience all the standard features. You just see what actually the features that's the software has been giving in, and to find the gaps. Even tomorrow when the system goes live also, you are going to use the same software. What we are saying is, why don't you experience the software before and try to find out the gaps, and then then draft the URS. So that's where is that when taking some inputs from your vendor, and you should be able to do the URS, and then you discussing on the commercials. not this particular approach of, because when you visually see something, right, your really means your mind works faster, right? If you need to go through a lengthy document, it's really boring for in today's scenario too. So this really makes you to critical thinking that when you are experiencing the software, because when there are many people have been asking some questions on the kind of what how you can do the risk and factors and all these things. There are there are functional risks are there, and there are some system risks are there. Now when you're getting into this software experiencing, you can also get into the functional risk anyway, you being a business user know about it. And when you're talking about critical thinking on towards the system risk factors, so that will come based on the experience that you are having with the product. And in addition to the critical thinking, the visual way of seeing it makes you to logical thinking more, because you see something on the screen and why it should be like this, why can't it be like this, and why this particular feature really benefits my organization, even I didn't thought of it before. All the standard features are non-critical, can be unscripted with a vendor conformance. Suppose for example there is a standard feature which has been running across different companies, where I do the test, because when you're talking about that I'm not doing any testing, I do the test, but the test script, whatever the test results are, the entire test executions is available in my database, that my test server, all the kind of information has been available, which is readily been accessible. So that means I am not writing any specific document, but at least means I tested this, that is an evidence already been there, right? So that's something which foresee that this can be really means give a good amount of benefit in terms of minimizing the documentation. When you're talking about a CSA or a CSV, right? Understand whatever the approach you follow, that your development lifecycle model, whether you follow the V model, whether you follow the waterfall model, or that you follow the agile model, your model, the life cycle and the deliverables artifacts remains as same, but how much minimal it is, that's something we are discussing from yesterday onwards. Now this is typical how to apply critical thinking on and assurance to a CSV in the user requirements phase. Why that instead of just following the user requirements in a written document format, this is something which we have been talking about, and configuration and experimentation. So the vendor will configure and the business user will experiment. So we both can arrive at boss, this is what is something is a detailed kind of thing. Then that's where is we are both on the same page. Then we get on to the next. How this can be done, that I'm going to talk about that in my next slide. So now this really helps to bridge the gap between the technology vendor and the business user. So we are on the same page before we are getting into the detail of configurations which are not as a standard features. And we can realize the business requirement at very early stage of the project, resulting in a faster delivery. And there is a no repetitive documentation and the great reduction in the integration or the validation cost. Now, how this can be done, I'll just play a short video on how typically the low code looks like. So this is where we are trying to means create an application. I'm not talking about a low code is only because this is a buzz, right? Today the most of these many vendors have been available working on this low code. So these low codes really makes you to visually develop an application. So the earlier screen what you have seen is just creating a end user screen, and now we are just creating a workflow, that how the approval process should happen. So here, when you see that there are the e-signatures or whatever you wanted to configure it, you can able to configure it here. So that configuration automatically takes up the required thing. You can define your roles and responsibilities, right? You can just do the check-ins from here directly, and you can also build your own that dashboards from this. And there are some questions have been asked, in terms of there are some legacy systems that are there, and how you can import the data from legacy systems to the new systems also. That can also be done through this particular, the ETL kind of, that the tools, right, which have been available as a part of the low code offerings. And now coming to this. So what I would like to talk about is you can take a benefit of CSA approach in the current V model, where it's a more of how you wanted to change your way of style of taking the requirements, how you wanted to minimize your documentation, and because there is an already been a product is been available and the product is already been implemented at different customers, right? So now I'm talking about the CSA and CSV, wherein your CSV approach to the CSA approach, then how you are going to practice is different, but underlying things are going to be the same. In a current CSV approach also, you have a documentation and you have a testing, you have an assurance, then the critical thinking definitely will come, right? And but the amount of time that what you spend on this is really like this. And but when you are going with a CSA approach, you're putting a more effort towards the critical thinking and an assurance. Assurance is nothing but whether the software as expected, whether it is been meeting the requirements or not. Next, testing and also documentation. So there are some of the platforms of a low code, then automatically give you the design document. So you don't need to write a design document by itself. It gives you the design document, right? So this is what is something adopting the latest technology trends, and that can really helps you in taking up the CSA model. Right now, there are a little bit of confusion saying that okay, I'm applying this to the V model, and can I apply to the waterfall or even to the agile model? Even this configuration and experimentation is something like where you are visually seeing something, right? So here, when we are even in the agile model, if you are considering 4-week sprints or whatever, still there is a requirement gap, right? Because what you have written in the document and interpretation of that written content is going to be different by the different people. So that's where is even this concept can be applied of this configuration and experimentation using this low code platforms can be applied to any kind of the life cycle model apply it. And so experience the requirements, as I said, the before finalizing the functional requirements, the configuration and approach is going to give you the good results, right? Which reduces the project failures. Project failure is not nothing but the project has been maybe running for 1 year against a 2 months, 3 months of agreed time, then it is considered as a failure because you already lost a good amount of money because of the delay. So these things can easily be addressed. So you can able to create an EQMS. If an EQMS kind of software is there with the 5 modules, you can able to implement and make it live in 3 months. And this logical and critical thinking with visual modeling definitely makes the organizations to minimize the number of the current challenges in the manual process. It makes you to think. When you start thinking, you being a business user, getting a right platform, somebody is dragging and developing something for you, definitely your thoughts comes out very well. So there are scenarios wherein when the technology vendor is really competent enough, saying that I have a good experience of implementing systems, and when they are working with you, then definitely you can arrive at minimizing the inefficiencies in the current paper-based systems. This is one liner. Your enhanced critical thinking plus an assurance and a testing activities, that is an unscripted testing, can be achieved through a configuration and experimentation while using the low-code development platforms. So this is something which I would like to share a one-liner where how you can take a benefit of this assurance and also the unscripted testing with the low-code development platforms. So that's it. The Ample Logic has been practicing this kind of approach, what I'm talking about, a configuration and experimentation, and some of our customers are also been here. And this has been really helping us in building more COTS products, right? When you can see, there are many COTS products that what we have been built and continuously been building the COTS products. So with the low code kind of scenarios. And using this low code, again, your integrations costs are going to be very minimal, because when we are talking about a validation is launching a system, but at the same time when you're integrating a system within other systems, then the cost is going to be also you need to consider. So these low code platforms are the revolution in the current day scenario, and there are many low code platforms are being available, and these low code platforms are really helping the organizations in minimizing the cost and also minimizing the development time and making applications live faster than earlier methodologies.